In this video, I want to talk about exercise for vocal professionals. What are the benefits, what are the risks, and which modalities are likely to be the most beneficial for you? Hello and welcome to the Vocal Pro Health Hub, the destination for singers and other voice professionals looking to increase their vocal health and longevity by focusing on their general health. So this video is the first in a series of videos talking about everything to do with exercise and the voice. This is one of my favorite topics too. And given the amount of people who slide into my DMs asking me questions about this topic, it seems to be one of your favorite topics as well. So in this video, I want to talk about the benefits of exercise. And from my perspective, this is the approach I tend to take. And I like to think of all conversations surrounding the nuances of exercises and vocal professionals should really come under this umbrella of the quite incredible benefits that it can offer someone. So I'm going to talk about the benefits of exercise generally, and then I'm going to talk about singer-specific benefits. So why exercise? This is probably the easiest video I'm going to have to make because the benefits of exercise are well known, well documented, and there's mountains of evidence supporting it. So we're talking about things like increased cardiovascular health. I hear your heart and lungs are pretty important, so probably best to look after them. We know exercise is one of, if not the best way to do that. Increased muscular strength and mass. And when I'm talking about this, everyone thinks about muscular strength as something that, young men, young bros who want to be jacked are really into. But actually, I think the opposite should really be the norm. It's actually as we age that we need to care a lot more about these things. And many of you have probably heard of a thing called age-related sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle mass as we age. It's a real huge problem. It's actually associated with all-cause mortality, dying of any cause. So maintaining your muscle mass and strength, particularly as you age, is really important and really, really beneficial. Increased bone density, like muscle mass, our bone density tends to decline as we age, particularly in women who have gone through the menopause. Obviously, all of you, I'm sure, have heard of osteoporosis. Exercising can be, once again, one of the best ways to help maintain bone density. It prevents cognitive decline of various sorts, and there's a lot of research recently about the benefits of exercise in reducing risk of dementia. Improvements to hormonal and metabolic profile, that's fairly self-explanatory, but obviously your metabolic profile tends to improve with regular exercise. Improved mental health, really, really overlooked. And there's a lot of research now into depressive symptoms and the impact of exercise on them. So we really see a reduction or even sometimes elimination of depressive symptoms when people engage in regular exercise. This one can be a little bit hard for people to take on board, in my experience, and I understand why. And just to clarify from my perspective, and I think the sort of general perspective of people who work in this space, no one's really saying that all you need to get rid of your depressive symptoms is a bit of exercise and a good diet. But it certainly is a valuable tool, so I wouldn't recommend you eliminate or even reduce the other interventions you might be using for mental health issues, pharmacological or psychological. But we know really now for a fact that exercise is an extremely valuable tool, so why not utilize it? And then the final issue is quite interesting to me, weight management. Yes, exercise can be beneficial for weight management. However, in my opinion, it is sort of a narcissist's way of losing weight for those who are trying to achieve that. And by that I mean, if you start to look at the amount of exercise you have to do to work off the amount of calories in a Mars bar or a cheeseburger or a pizza or whatever, you start to notice the numbers really don't add up. You're looking at sort of hours and hours of exercise to work off many common foods that we tend to eat. So trying to outrun or out-exercise poor dietary choices can be really, really difficult and is generally not a particularly good idea. So although when people think about things like exercise, they often, one of the first things, or maybe the first thing, they normally associate with it is weight loss. It's a really strong thing in our culture. Although there's nothing wrong with that, when I'm working with clients or patients, I tend to recommend focusing on the other more significant health benefits that I've just outlined. Increased bone density, increased muscle mass, better cardiovascular health, better cognitive health, better mental health. These are the things I would also encourage you to focus on. And if you get a change in weight, a desired change in weight as a consequence of that, that's great. But I wouldn't recommend putting weight loss at the forefront of your rationale for exercising. So in short, why exercise? It's just really, really good for you. Certainly one of the most important things you can do for your health. And many people smarter than me would say it's the best thing you can engage in regularly to improve your overall health. So it's quite an important element of healthcare. It reduces the risk of the vast majority of chronic illnesses and is associated, once again, with lower all-cause mortality. It's associated with a lower risk of dying from any cause. So when thinking about exercise, we have this sort of cultural way of thinking about it, fitness industry related way of thinking about exercise, which tends to be quite aesthetically focused. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. However, I generally find benefit in the recommendation that you sort of put that to one side, sort of almost forget about that and think about your health and the incredible impact exercise can have on your general health. So how does this map onto a vocal professional? Well, singers are people too, voice professionals are people too, so all those previous benefits listed will of course map onto you personally. Now this will impact your just general life, but can also be impactful to your career. Nothing will mess up a contract like having to contend with heart disease or not being able to travel because of illness. So for me, that is sort of enough, those incredible benefits. However, in my experience, some singers tend to be more focused on the singer-specific benefits and a bit less focused on the general health benefits, which I understand. It's particularly if you're a sort of 25-year-old or a young person, it can be very difficult to think about your cardiovascular disease risk. It's almost like paying into a pension pot. It's very hard to do when you're younger because you're not thinking that far ahead. But there are some specific benefits that map onto vocal professionals quite nicely, and I think they're worth noting in this context. So regular exercise, tends to be associated with increased immune functioning, or what sometimes people refer to as more optimized immune functioning. I prefer to call it non-compromised immune functioning, because I think this idea of supercharging your immune system is a bit of a sort of sales tactic and not particularly accurate way of describing it. But of course, immune functioning is very important for singers and vocal professionals. Most singers or vocal professionals relate to the idea that when you're sick, your voice is one of the first things to suffer. So I would argue, certainly was the case in my singing career, that immune health was really important and staying, colds and flu free. It was very valuable, not just for the career generally, but it was valuable financially because not having to cancel work because of illness can be very beneficial financially. Improved sleep, once again, in my experience, the majority of singers do notice a decline in their vocal performance when their sleep is compromised, and regular exercise tends to be associated with improved quality of sleep. So another really good reason for a vocal professional to consider exercise. Another one that's a little bit more esoteric, but I think very relevant. People with increased, particularly cardiovascular fitness, tend to have increased or faster tissue recovery time. Now, explaining why is a little bit above my pay grade, but it has something to do with increased oxygenation, increased blood flow to parts of the body, and so forth. It tends to relate practically, as a clinician, what I'm interested in is the practical effect. And what we see is faster tissue recovery time. So you can sort of do more and then recover, and then you can do the same thing the next day, if that makes sense. We now know, there's certainly some evidence, that that also specifically relates to the vocal tissues. So by that, I mean, obviously the vocal tissues, I know it's not quite the same as, muscular work or, micro tearing, muscular damage when you work out or exercise, but, they do, when you work the vocal tissues, they need to recover after. This is the reason opera singers will sing a big long opera and they need to take a day off afterwards, and they need recovery time. We now know greater cardiovascular fitness tends to map onto faster vocal recovery time in singers and other vocal professionals. So, in my opinion, this is really valuable information, particularly for West End or Broadway performers who are doing, 6, 7, 8, 9, I don't even know how many shows a week, night after night after night, 2 on a Saturday sort of thing. If you are able to recover more quickly night after night, show after show, it will relate to, better performance, better stamina. You will have fewer shows that suffer due to the fact that you're maybe a bit vocally tired or vocally fatigued. So that will have both acute benefits, just your day-to-day show performance will be likely improved, but also I would argue it makes you less likely to suffering vocal injury. Because one thing I've certainly seen is people can become workhorses. They learn to sort of fight through vocal fatigue and suboptimal vocal performance. And so greater cardiovascular fitness can map onto that quite nicely in all of those ways. And then finally, improvement of functional task abilities. That basically just means your ability to do just physical activities improves as you exercise. Now, this is somewhat dependent on how you train, but if you train what I would call in an intelligent way, picking good exercises, using full range of motion, things like that, having variance in your training, you simply just become better at doing physical tasks, walking up the stairs, carrying the shopping, carrying your children on your shoulders, things like that. And this can map onto stage requirements. Even in the opera world, the world I come from, we're often asked to do some pretty athletic things on stage, difficult things on stage. If you exercise, you are likely to have more capacity to perform what is required of you. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that are often asked of me, or sort of people bring up in when I give seminars or in consultations, that I just wanted to touch on. And lest I be called an exercise zealot, because obviously I think it's clear I'm quite a fan, an advocate for exercise. However, it's not magic, and there are certain things that it isn't so good for. So one of which we've already touched on: weight loss on its own. In my opinion, weight loss, if that's what you're trying to achieve, is better achieved through dietary choices rather than just trying to sort of run off all the excess calories or burn them off at the gym or at spin class or whatever. Some people can do it, but in my experience, it tends to lead to burnout over time because it's just really, really difficult to do. And once again, comparing the amount of exercise you have to do to utilize the amount of calories in commonly consumed foods, you start to recognize very quickly that the equation just doesn't add up. Also, something that a lot of people hypothesize, and it makes sense, it's sort of a logical question. A lot of people ask if sort of becoming fitter in a cardiovascular sense will make you better able to control your breath for singing. A lot of singers have asked me, should I take up swimming? Because then I really have to learn to control my breath, and will that improve my capacity when I'm, singing a long legato phrase or something like that? I think it's logical and I think it makes sense to ask it, but I'm yet to find evidence of it. So I think it's probably, I think exercise probably isn't great for improving the specific breath control needed for singing or controlled vocal effort. It might improve your capacity generally. It might kind of expand your lungs. That's a very non-scientific term, but increase your tidal volume of your lungs. That may be somewhat beneficial, but in my opinion, my experience, the skill required to control your breath for the specific requirement of singing, sustained singing, let's say, is really only developed by practicing it. It's more of a skill than a capacity, if that makes sense. If I could give an analogy, hopefully this is valuable. Um, you could put someone in a Formula One race car, but if they don't have the skill to drive it, it's really not going to be any valuable. And I'd say that's somewhat of a useful analogy. By exercising, by swimming, things like that, learning breath control, you might be developing your capacity, but you still have to develop the skill to be able to control it. So rather than just do hundreds and hundreds of laps in the swimming pool, I think better to spend many, many hours in the practice room to improve that particular quality of your voice. So there you go, the benefits of exercise generally and the singer-specific benefits, in my opinion. Thank you for watching. In the next video, I'm going to be addressing those common singer or vocal professional concerns associated with exercise, things like holding breath, developing tension, developing muscular imbalances, things like that. So please look out for that video. Remember, your voice is your instrument. Why not treat it like a Stradivarius? If you have any questions or perhaps suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comments below. I'm here to guide and support you on your journey to vocal health and longevity. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.